Last week was a little rough getting games in, but I did pull it off, and this means it's time for another road to gold. Welcome to War Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. It's me, it's Toast. How are you all doing today? As much as I love WARCRY, sometimes life does get in the way, and last week was another pretty darn difficult week to actually fit games in. So I only managed to get one game in, but it was a pretty darn serious game as it was the finals of the TTS League, and I was up against Skaven again, and it was a double Rat Ogre list. Now, I did say last week I was going to run a more thematically untamed beasts list with more beasts. However, since it was such a important game, I thought, you know, I've ran this Fomroid Crusher list, this whole league. Let's end the league with that same list. So it's another Fomroid week. It's the final send-off to the Fomroid Vexmo Wombo combo, and that's what we're going to do. Next week, we are going into some more freaky stuff. I've got an Ephelim list planned. I've got some more Gnarl Spirit stuff planned. And I have some Spawn stuff planned. And that should be pretty darn cool. I've also been dabbling in the idea of like double Rock Tusk Prowler. But that's a bit harder to pull off because they are quite expensive for how squishy they are. They're like 25 points more expensive than a Spawn. And like have 10 less wounds. So they're quite squishy compared to other things I could take for cheaper, but it is what it is. We'll see how that works out. But for today, like I said, Fomroid, Vexmo, same list as usual. Let's get right into it. Well, apparently I am just in the business of telling lies because we're not going right into it. It's time for a bit of shilling first. Badoosh.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
Please consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing, as that helps me fight against that dastardly YouTube algorithmic demon. And if you want to help any more tangible way, then please consider signing up to my Patreon or my YouTube members, or using my Element Games affiliate link down below when buying some new WARCRY gubbins. A huge shout out to my patrons and members who you can find on screen now. Badoosh. But with all of that out of the way, it's time to get on with the show.
And now for something completely different.
And we are back, and here is the list I've been running for the past couple of weeks. Badoosh. And the list is really good. Now, the Untamed Beast element does help. On the surface, you go, okay, you've got two fairly powerful allies, and that's why you're winning. And yes, that is kind of true. The allies definitely help. Vexmo is very, very powerful. Fomroid Crusher is highly underused now. It's absolutely fantastic still. We saw this last week when he went 1v1 versus a Morgok and a Mega Boss and kind of survived for like 2 whole turns and killed one of them and almost killed the other. The Fomroid Crusher is kind of insane still, despite being fairly underused after his points increase and the introduction of Vexmo. The two together work really well, especially when there's a first Fang on the board. And this is where the Untamed Beast element really comes into play. The first Fang is a fantastic mechanism for pulling things for 130 points, for 15 wounds, good in melee, a great range attack, and a very expensive pull that also gives you an extra attack action. It's wonderful. He's always pulled his weight. In every single game, he's done something that's just like, damn, I am so glad you're here. And he is like the beating heart of the list. Speaking of hearts, the heart eater is also wonderful. This guy just gets in. He often dies because he's quite squishy, but he's a blender, right? 5525 is a really nice profile. He just cuts through chaff. And then I have my chaff, and Untamed Beast chaff are really solid. For 55 points, they've got 8 wounds, which is a little bit low. They're fast at movement 5, and what really makes them good is their ability to really stick around and not die to mid-range stuff because of brute resilience. Being able to reduce damage by 1 is substantial. It lets them just stand toe-to-toe and just take hits from things that are much more expensive, like twice their cost, and stay there for like 1, 2, possibly even 3 turns. And it's just a dick to deal with, honestly. Despite all of that good stuff the Untamed Beasts bring to the list, many games have been won because of Vexmo and the Fomroid just being really good picks. And having a pull for the yank and spank, just yank them with the harpoon and smack with Vexmo or smack with the Fomroid. It works really well. It's a super, super easy strategy to pull off. It works in all kinds of lists. You don't even need to play Untamed Beast for that. You could just take like a Bray Shaman, who is not that much more expensive as an ally. And has more wounds and is arguably a better range attack and a cheaper pull. You could go more melee focused, go for that Slaughter Priest, that kind of thing. Even with Ephelim, right? Take Ephelim plus Apotrax. That's even more expensive, but you get a pull, you get an Ephelim, you get teleports. There's all kind of cool stuff there as well. So it's not the only way to run the yank and spank, but it undeniably works. And going into the Skaven game. So Skaven are really popular now because of the rework to Rat Ogres and the introduction of their battle trait. And Rat Ogres are amazing, right? 4/6, 3/6, being able to attack again on a double for free, providing you aren't injured. If you're injured, you start taking like massive amounts of self damage. If they're uninjured or even slightly injured, they just run in, they attack, they then double to attack again, they get whipped to attack again, they get whipped to attack again. These guys can attack like 4 or 5 times a turn with their 4 attacks and their insane damage profile and strength. They are really hard to deal with. They are one of the killiest models in the game at the minute, I think, and they are quite cheap for what you get, especially when they're still toughness 5 with 28 wounds. They're fairly hard to shift, and the things they get into contact with tend to die. Now, my list is a little bit better at dealing with it because I have a Vexmore who is actually tough enough to take a rampaging Rat Ogre on the chin and possibly survive, and a Red Crusher who will almost guaranteed survive because his wound pool is just so high. So going in, my plan here was not to actually engage those Rat Ogres and actually just take them on me, have them run into me, then ideally I swing back and then take them out on that return swing, because my defenses should hopefully hold out, whilst his defenses probably won't. Being toughness 5 is great, but my guys are strength 10 or strength 6. I punch right through toughness 5, and the game went really, really well. But it boiled down to I had advantage on one turn, then we tied out every other turn. And this partially comes down to having a strong list and being able to kill things. The actual reason I won was because I saw an opening on turn 2 and I took it. So in short, turn 1 was fairly uneventful. We just danced around, we waited, we got no objectives, and we just held points. And then turn 2, our reinforcements came in. So my Vexmore came in very close to one of his objectives, and that objective is kind of spooky for my opponent because his Rat Ogre is right next to Vexmore. And basically, if I run in there, I'm going to get a big old hit. And whilst Vexmore can't actually kill on a move and attack into a Rat Ogre, it's still spooky, right? If Vexmore goes in there, gets his free swings off, and then you don't have a response to that, like if you already activated, then next turn I get initiative, you die. So in the end, my opponent was really just dancing around the idea that, well, we've got an equal number of models, what do I do? And I knew he didn't really want to engage me unless he had to, and keeping Vexmore off the point was really important, naturally. But in the end, because I clawed some activation advantage, my first fan came in, threw a spear, killed one of his chaff, which allowed me then to take a point that was otherwise his because it only had one chaff guy on it. And that was pretty good. This then forced my opponent to tie up Vexmore, because if Vexmore got that point, I could start to then bully him, basically. I could start building the objectives and really start gaining momentum. So his Rat Ogre eventually, at the end of the turn, walked into Vexmore and left Vexmore on like 5 HP. Right, Vexmore took the hits, he got some pretty damn meaty crits in there, and Vexmore was dropped all the way down to just 5 HP. But because Vexmore hadn't went yet, Vexmore came back in, swung back with Onslaught for 6 attacks, and did 35 damage and just deleted the Rat Ogre like he was nothing. And that was a massive, massive swing, because that also meant that his gambit didn't pay off. One is Rat Ogre, one of his most powerful things, has just died. And now this objective he was trying to defend is only defended by a Packmaster, and I have a First Fang and a Vexmore about to walk on turn 3 and forcibly take it. Now, on the other side of the board, however, there was some issues. I had my Red Crusher, and he got tagged by a wonderful bodyguard combo. So Scritch moved up with a Storm Vermin with Inspiring Presence, and then I couldn't attack, right? He got no engagement range with my Red Crusher, and then I just couldn't attack Scritch, which was pretty good. And he rolled pretty well. Scritch had a big old chunk of damage, like 12 damage to the Fomroid just by swinging in. But this is where the play really came into play. So because of the secondary might versus right, we can basically pick a model every turn, and if they have the most wounds on an objective, then they count as 2. Now, he had a lot of reinforcements coming in on the point nearest to my Red Crusher's objective, and he had aggressively moved his guys on this point. I only had a Red Crusher and like 1 Planeswalker there. I ain't holding that, that's just gone. But now that the Rat Ogre was gone off the objective and then killed, and there was just that Packmaster on the objective, I disengaged the Fomroid and just moved him onto the objective once he couldn't do anything about it. And then because of might versus right, and then I took it because my Foam Crusher is worth 2 to his 1, and that's now my objective. Considering I've taken 2 of his objectives this turn and managed to hold onto another one, 3 to 1 in objective count on turn 2 was massive. It might look like I've got a fairly humongous advantage at the bottom of turn 2. I have 3 of the 4 objectives. Both my big beaters on the board, they're injured, but they're alive, and he only has 1 big beater left. It was not as cut and dry as you might think, because he had enough bodies on the board with resurrections and all that good stuff to basically forcibly take the 2 objectives I started with, basically bringing the game back to that tie state of 2 objectives each. Now, I would win in this scenario, but with clever play, Skaven movement, he could absolutely force 1 objective and outplay me in that way. So it was very important that I didn't allow that to happen. And this meant playing more aggressively than I would otherwise do to hopefully force my opponent to kind of take the bait a bit and stick to his ground and stay where he is. And it kind of worked to a degree. Guys were reviving back on the board, moving on objectives, being a pain, really keeping us locked into places I didn't necessarily want to be. But I did have a few planesrunners just available to run around the board and just kind of get in the way, kind of distract, and ultimately just die. And they did. I lost a lot of planesrunners this game, but they died to basically just keep the Skaven where they were. Didn't really let the Skaven do what they wanted to do. And this eventually led to the Hail Mary. So the final Rat Ogre had to do something. It had to try, at least, to use its power to brute force through an objective and force that hold, right? If he kills the Foam Crusher specifically, then he can might versus right, and he claims an objective that was otherwise mine, because he has more wounds than my other highest wound, which is Vexmore. Now, he ran in, and he just completely bounced off the Foam Crusher, and that is such an unfortunate thing to happen, because he's rolling pretty well so far on things that didn't need to roll well. His chaff mulching Skaven stuff were just rolling crazy. My guys, my planesrunners were falling down like nothing because the crits were coming, but the second he tried to do anything with his Rat Ogre, nothing happened. And then the Foam Crusher swung back for 44 wounds back on this poor little Rat Ogre, completely deleting it. And that was basically the game. With both his ogres down, the only real thing that can actually fight is his Scritch, and Scritch can't take on a Fomeroid, it can't take on a Vexmore, and ultimately it couldn't even get there to fight. The only thing it would actually fight was the Heart Eater, and let's be honest, in that matchup, the Heart Eater absolutely clears, right? The Heart Eater will absolutely just eat Scritch alive. He's such a good blender against that kind of low value defense profile, and Scritch isn't that good in combat. So it kind of ended the game, and whilst I can absolutely say for certain that my dice were pretty darn hot when it counted, having the Vexmore and the Fomeroid just delete Rat Ogres like they were nothing was kind of crazy. I think the actual reason for the victory was that turn 2 Foam Crusher move, followed by the potential misplay of my opponent. We all make them. It's no shade there. We all make mistakes. Of moving his Rat Ogre and charging it a Vexmore. I am not entirely sure the maths is in his favor to actually kill Vexmore on a move and double attack. So it was a pretty Hail Mary charge, and Vexmore is very good at killing people in return. And once that Rat Ogre died, it completely opened up this entire flank. Even just him moving off allowed the Fomeroid to move freely and take that point with might versus right. And that was really the end of that. And once I'd secured the advantage on turn 2, all I had to do was really just play defensively and just kind of try and play distraction, harry, just be a pain in the ass and deal with any reviving things coming on. Because he was reviving things every turn, and they were coming on behind my guys and trying to take objectives back. But with First Fang, Spear Throws, and a Heart Eater, they didn't live long enough to actually make an impact, which was kind of handy for me. So that was the game. I ended the league with a 3 wins and a draw. I think all of them running this list, if I recall correctly. And the list is good. It's really, really good. I don't really want to run it, though. It doesn't feel like I'm running Untamed Beasts. I said this last time. If I want to run Untamed Beast in one event, I do kind of want to just play a warband that at least feels like I'm playing the warband I'm playing. I don't just want to take the best allies. I don't like playing that way. But this is the nature of this series. I want to try and find the best list. I want to play it and try different things. And it would be silly not to give this genuinely powerful list a whirl. And it was good. It was a really solid list. It did work. It beat Skaven, it beat Ironjaws, it beat Sylvaneth. It tied to a different Skaven player, right? Ironjaws and Skaven are like some of the highest tiered warbands right now. And it did well. It kind of shows that these allies do actually help elevate these middling to low tier warbands into this competitive status, right? Being able to fight into competitive warbands and then reliably win. A little bit of pilot skill, a bit of luck, and some elevation from some really good profiles. You can do a lot, right? But yeah, that was the only game I played this week, and it was pretty darn fantastic. I had a really fun time. My opponent, as per usual, was amazing. Every opponent I've had so far has been absolutely fantastic to play against. There's fantastic characters, wonderful personalities, and just a joy to roll dice with. And next league, I believe, is the Christmas League. And I am very excited to play that. I'll be running something not Untamed Beast related, I think, just something random. So sadly, that won't be Road to Golded, but I will be doing things in Road to Gold, running Untamed Beast into more one-off, running Road to Gold into some pickup games, and I'll be running some more beasts. I have some pretty fun ideas that I think could work. Completely moving away from having big beaters. I don't think I'll need them going forward. I have some sneaky plans, and it should be pretty darn fun. But I'll leave that for next episode to keep you all hanging on the edge of your seats. But that's Road to Gold Week 4 out of the way. So I'll catch you all next time, lads, ladies, and everybody in between and beyond. Ta-ra. Groovy. Hey all, and welcome to the post-toast credits. A massive shout out to my algorithmic demon slayers, Andy Morris, blah blah blah, the Head Knight of Paint, Heinz D, Long Run Hobbies, Lord Phylax, Maps, Sable Saber, Steph, Steve Bean, the Houston Toad, Tough Tootin' Baby, and Velas. A huge thank you for supporting the channel, and I will catch you all next time. Ta-ra!